Hello, coaches. Welcome back. Coach KW here for another exciting session. Hope you're all well. My preseason has just started, which is fantastic. I've had two great sessions with my boys. Can't wait to get back out there. I hope this time of year, when this video is recorded, you're in the same boat. One of the things I did notice, unfortunately, when I was coaching, was I was taking a look around at some of the other fields and not loving what I saw every time. We had, players out there, and I could just see lines and people doing one skill function in their drill while the rest of the crew, sometimes 8, 10, 12 kids, just standing in line waiting to go next. And I was kind of disappointed. And it got me thinking, like, how is it that we judge whether a drill is worthwhile? If you've taken a coaching course at all, one of the things they talk about is the principles of play. And that's the thing we're going to take a look at today. Because when I sat there and I watched, I could say that drill, that thing that they were doing really is not meeting almost any of the criteria that we'd want to be teaching. Never mind the fact that people are standing around, it's not efficient, kids are not active, they're not having fun, but they're also not working on multiple things that make them a better soccer player in an environment that's more game like or more challenging than waiting in line, taking a ball and saying, go do this one thing, and then come stand back. I'm going to show this book off here. This is a great book. The link will be in the description. Football's Principles of Play by Peter Prickett. Basically, what he does, he goes over a little bit of the history of it. 1968, gentleman for the FA in England kind of codified these unwritten rules or concepts into what is now known as the principles of play, and they've been that way ever since. And so this book explores the 5 attacking, the 5 defending principles of play traditionally. And then, because there's been lots of modern developments in the game, different ways of thinking about it, different ways of playing it, that he then also explores some of these modern takes on different principles of play and how they relate. And maybe the best thing about this, and it's not a very big book, it's pretty short. One of the best things about this book is at the end, he takes all the principles of play and shows an example session for what might it look like to work on those principles of play. And it's really helpful because it gives you some ideas of like, oh, I can either use that or I could use something like it to create and work on those things. So I feel like it's a great measuring stick to evaluate a session or a drill or a plan that you may see online or you might see somebody do and say, what of the principles of play are they approaching and trying to instruct? And is it multiple? And is it complex? And is it integrated? Or is it very focused on one certain thing? And you can use that as another measuring stick. Besides, can all my kids get in on it? Can they be active with it? Are they going to have fun with it? I mean, you and I may define fun a little bit different than the kids do, but I think you know what I mean. So let's take a look at them. We're going to look at one slide that I created. I'll give you a link as well if you want to download this infographic that I made to use as a reference sheet. But let's go and take a look at that and kind of work through that now. Okay, so here, this slide, I made this infographic, and I'll make this available. There'll be a link in the description where you can download it if you want. There are 2 sets of principles of play. There's the attacking or in possession one, and there's the defending or out of position, and each one has 5 elements. And again, if you take a coaching course, this is going to get pounded into you with good reason. So let's go through and talk about this. So the first one is penetration. So soccer is in a class of game called a invasion game. If you think about it, you're trying to take the ball from your side to the opposition side. You're invading their territory with the goal of trying to put the ball in the net or score by getting through your opponent to their end goal, what they're trying to defend. Kind of medieval sort of thought process, but that's the type of game it is. Hockey's that way, football, all those types of games, invasion games. And penetration is a key component. How can you get your players and the ball into their zone? And so we take a look at some of these attacking examples to kind of think about what does that mean by penetration? Can you pass through them? Can you pass around them? Can you pass over them? Can you dribble with them? Can you shoot the ball? Shooting the ball is an act of penetration. All those things are penetration, and it's the first principle of play that's always on the list. Second, then, is support. how can your teammates support each other when they're trying to penetrate the ball? And so we can take a look at those examples. How can you be shaped and formed on the field to make multiple passing options? Your angles of support, so spacing between each other. So support. How can you create a session that works on that support? And kind of related to support is width. Using the width of the field, making the field big, spreading out. So width is one of those key components because if you can make the field big, it makes it harder for your opponent to cover every possibility that you have on the field. The next one is movement. Soccer is a game of constant movement, and having that coordinated movement between players so that they know where they should be going next or what to expect from their teammates is an important one. So whether that's moving the ball and moving with the ball or moving without the ball, which is, let's be honest, for an individual player, probably 94% of the game is they don't have the ball, but they're having to move to places to either support their teammates or help defend with their teammates, right? So movement. And then the last one is creativity. Soccer is a game of flair. It's a game of brilliance. Some of the best players, they do things you would never expect. And as part of the game, having that creativity to try something to surprise and delight, or surprise and dismay, really, the opposition side, is part of the game. So whether that's, disguising your true reason for having certain movements and surprising the team, or those individual skills, those players that can play with flair, 1v1, beat a player on the dribble, make a unorthodox pass to unlock a defense. Creativity is all part and parcel of that. So when you're creating a attacking drill or session, or you're looking at a session online or someplace else, these are some criteria you can use to say, is this drill or session worth it? Do I have all my kids engaged? What is this drill really working on? Is it working on penetration and support? Is it working on movement and creativity? Is it working on width and support and penetration? Is it working in all five? And I can give you some examples. We're working on 1v1. You're probably working, you could say that's working on penetration and creativity because there's not a lot of support, there's not a lot of width. I mean, movement, but not really. They're just running with the ball necessarily. But they're trying to penetrate by trying to beat a player 1v1, and they're using their creativity to try and figure out new and unique ways to get past that player so they're surprised at the move and they get beat, right? So that's one example. I can think of another example. If you watched my 13 warm-up games, one of the games I love using is a 4-goal game where you have 2 goals at corners and you're playing, and it allows the team to decide whether or not to switch the field. Well, a drill or session or a game like that, it does all of those things. You're working on penetration because you're trying to score. You're looking at support because you want players around you. You're looking at width because you could switch the play from one side to the other. You've got movement as the players are trying to jockey for position and try to figure out which goal might be free for them. And your creativity as they're trying to get there. Can they find new, novel, exciting ways to invent to get the ball from where they have it to the back of the net? So that's the offensive side of the game, attacking or in possession. So now let's flip the coin. Let's look at the defending and out of possession principles of play. Now, I'm going to say this, I'll say this before, but it bears doing. When you're creating a session and you're running a session, you need to resist the urge to coach both sides of the ball. If it's an attacking session, only coach the attacking principles. And if it's a defensive session, only coach the defensive session because it's confusing for your players. Have one message. You could use the same drill and 1 week only coach the attacking principles. And the next week, use the same drill, but now only coach the defensive principles. It's much clearer for your players and it's much more effective. You think you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and there are studies out there. It doesn't. Even if you have an assistant coach, because you want all your players to focus on whatever it is the main concept is. So one side of the ball. So now we're going to look at the defending out of possession. So when we look at defending, first one is delay. How can we apply pressure to the ball carrier or the other team to slow their progress down or stop it or reverse it? All of those things are delay, right? We're trying to make sure that we get the play away from danger, whether that's pushing them to the outside or blocking them with a low block or parking the bus or defending 1v1, all those things, that's delay. The next is depth. And now that is defending in layers. It's making sure that players support each other. It's kind of the opposite of support on attacking. It's the same concept. You have depth, but now you're creating layers of defense so that if one player gets beat, there's somebody there to help cover and support them. The next is compaction, which is obviously the opposite of width. Now you want to make the field small. You want to squeeze in, you want to narrow the gaps between your defensive players to make it harder for players to move the ball in those gaps. And so, can you work on getting compact and bringing your players inside and closing down spaces to make it harder for the opposition? The next is balance. And that kind of goes with movement, and the opposite thing, because now what you're looking to do is, while the ball is presenting a clear and present danger in one area of the field, you still need to have the balance so that if the ball gets switched to another area, your team can easily move themselves over to that side to now provide that delay, the depth, the compaction. So balance is that movement of your players into positions that support the play, but also are ready to spring into action if the ball moves, if the point of attack moves to another part of the field, that you can get there because you have balance. You've not committed all your players to one single area of the field. And the last one, perhaps the hardest to teach kids, especially the younger ones, is patience. You have to wait for the moment. You have to defend as a team. We've all seen it. You have a player that got in front of the player. You think they're going to stand them up and delay them till they get help. And what do? They go diving in, trying to steal the ball right away. Because if I can just steal the ball, I can take off and go the other way. And the other player just walks around them, and now they're one-on-one with the keeper, or they're in the clear and they're running. So patience is that last piece. How do you get players to learn to pick their moment, to do the other things, whether it's delay or depth or compaction or balance? You get yourself into shape so that when the moment is right, then you can strike, whether that's a bad touch, a bad pass, the player turns into pressure, or he gets into where now the balance and the depth, now you can be 2v1 on that player and really commit to him. But again, having that patience to defend as a team and knowing when the right moment is to strike. So when you're working on a drill that's you're looking at the defending piece, now you have things you can look at to say, is this drill working on one or more of these areas? And is it doing it in a way that's cogent to our game model? One thing to have a drill that tells you how to do one thing, but if in 7v7 that happens very rarely, then it's not worth teaching it to the kids because it makes no sense. It's not applicable to them. So using these out of possession or defending principles of play when you're looking at defensive drills is a great way to do that. So let's go back to the 1v1 that we were looking at creativity. Well, now we're talking about delay and patience, whereas before we were talking about penetration and creativity. You can see they almost match up left to right, and that's on purpose. So now you're defending 1v1. Can you delay that player as they come at you? And can you have the patience to wait until they make a mistake or take a bad touch or go in the direction you want them to go to before you strike and try and win the ball? So again, using these principles of play to judge those things are super helpful for when you're designing or considering using a drill when you go forward. So that was a quick overview. I felt it was important to get into that topic. It's not a replacement for a coaching course in any way, shape, or form, but it's an important concept to understand so that A, you get a better sense of why you do things on the soccer field, and hopefully it's a measuring stick you can use when you're evaluating whether or not a driller session is worth it for you and your kids. Again, I'll leave a link to the book in the description, as well as a link to download that infographic. As always, if you could like, share, subscribe, and comment, that'd be huge help for the channel. Until the next time, I hope you're having a great preseason if you're watching this about the same time I'm doing this. And otherwise, I'll see you soon on the fields. Thanks a lot. Bye.